Welcome back to the Fantasy Sports Trade Association. Tony Sincata, Nando DeFino, live from New York City. Also heard on the FantasySportsNetwork.com/FSTA. And, of course, broadcasting on the Fantasy Sports Network. I'll tell you what, the list of celebrities keep growing.
This is really, we're sitting here watching the escalator and just people just pop up. Confused tourists who are looking for the lobby desk.
I was looking for the Statue of Liberty and I ran into Matt Berry.
What happened? Neil Ehrlich from Optimal Payments, OptimalPayments.com. Thanks for sponsoring this entire FSTA conference, man.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. This is our third or fourth time sponsoring as the platinum sponsor.
I think I have the lanyard from the last one. You guys gave it up
probably on the pass, but yeah, maybe not the lanyard, but it's another good company that's on there.
Sport Radar, right?
But we believe. I was asked earlier why sponsor this event, and for us, this was it's our way. We built our business on becoming subject matter experts in specific verticals. We have a long history in the gaming industry.
Nice.
And I think that fantasy is one of those areas inside of gaming that we have, identified as a growth area. Started about 5 years ago doing that, focusing on this. And for us, we believe that we are the leader in this space of processing payments for the fantasy sports operators. And we believe in giving back and supporting the industry that has helped grow our company.
Dude, it's so the business. You were saying this before you came on. People listening probably will never even encounter you, but you do a lot of the stuff that affects them almost directly, right?
Yeah, that's right. So we have a couple of consumer-facing products that are larger in Europe right now that'll be making a big entry into the U.S. in the near future. But most of our stuff is B2B. So a lot of the large daily fantasy operators, some of the season-long guys, some of the guys offering software services and analysis and that sort of thing would be our customers. So you're right. Most of the listeners might not know Optimal, but they do now. And,
Tony's you've been processing some of his money, I'm sure.
You know what's interesting? When they look at the daily fantasy sports industry, when we first got started, it was basically PayPal was the only way that we could play in these daily fantasy sites. Now we have credit card payments, and I think a lot of people in the industry that are skeptical of what's going on. Can you tell us how the payment structure works, and is it truly a safe environment when they look at the daily fantasy industry?
Yeah, listen, I think that you bring up some good points, but I think that what we always talk about is having a partner, a payments partner, that provides safe, secure, reliable transactions. So whether it's protecting the integrity of the industry, protecting the integrity of the customers, the credit cards, the data that's there, our systems are as secure as they can be. They're as secure as it gets. So when people, the facts are there that there's a greater chance of a fraudulent transaction happening when you pay for gas at the gas station or at a store in person or a restaurant than there is online. That's what the stats say. So we believe that we have the tools in place to not only make the consumer feel good when they're providing their credit card payment to these daily operators using our services, but the operators themselves take comfort in the fact of the services that we can provide from a security and risk management perspective.
Neil, have you gotten into playing fantasy, or have you been?
I'm almost retired right now.
No, not a bad deal.
I played for many years, mostly fantasy football. Obviously it's near and dear to me, which is one of the reasons that I got the company into this space.
Well, that's what I was getting to. Like you sometimes it's tough. Like when you go to companies, like, hey, you should do something fantasy. Like, oh no, I don't. What is fantasy? But if you're coming from a background where you played, it probably helped you to make the pick. Like, hey, we should get involved in this. It's
That's pretty much what happened. I mean, I was, see if who's watching the show, but. I was probably spending too much time at the office doing things like fantasy sports and worrying about my lineup and checking injury reports and the waiver wires that when we kind of saw the advent of the daily space, I said, wait a minute, this is something that, first of all, would be perfect for me, but also allowed this, with the growth, allowed us to get into the space a little more in depth and with a little more knowledge of it. I think it definitely helped that I knew about fantasy going into this.
Right.
And look, it's fun. I love the space. I mean, look, we're on the Fantasy Network. There's a Fantasy Sports Network.
It's not bad, right?
That in itself, it says a lot about where we've come. And I said it earlier when I was giving my speech inside that I think we've only scratched the surface. I think this has the potential to be much bigger than it is today. I think that we've only started to see some of that growth, and I'm just excited for what the future holds.
Dude, that's crazy if the surface is 57 million. right? You got to like, what's under here?
Well, you know, they're showing some stats. So if you look at the sports that are there, obviously football's king still. We all know that. But other sports are popping up. Other geographies are popping up. Our company, we're actually publicly traded in the UK. I'm based in Canada. We have a large presence in the US. So we're truly a global payments provider. And we have merchants all over the world. We service over 200 countries where we process payments for. So we talk about the 57. That's North America right now.
Yeah.
The world's a big place, so I'm extremely optimistic about the future.
You know what's amazing about that is we were here 2 years ago, it was 41 million, so 57 million now. And we're saying, 16 million, you got all this money, DraftKings and FanDuel are popping out there and promotion, and everybody's benefiting from what FanDuel and DraftKings has because we just get whole new players to the region. And you talk about the new sports that are there. What do you think as far as going forward in getting involved in the fantasy sports industry? If a guy's watching out there and he says, hey, you know what? I'm thinking about this idea I got. It's a little tied into fantasy sports. Would you tell him to go all in? There can't be a bigger field, a bigger reach right now than fantasy sports.
Look, I think that there's obviously there's the two big guys in the daily space in North America. We know FanDuel and DraftKings today are the two big guys. We get approached all the time. Probably what we're seeing the most of now is cricket. Because of the reach
there it is.
There we go.
Cricket.
Because of the reach that cricket has around the world, we get cricket and football or soccer in Europe, not American football. But those are probably the two areas that we see the most inquiries almost on a weekly basis. We're getting guys calling us and asking us about servicing them for their next cricket or soccer idea.
Man, that's amazing.
It is. This is like unbelievable, and I think that's the great thing. Like everybody knows the football, baseball, but we saw golf explode this year. There was $2 million tournaments there. We actually had a first $250,000 NHL fantasy event. We had a basketball millionaire. And when we hear sports like cricket and NASCAR, it's just going to continue to grow. Heck, we even played soccer when we don't even know what.
Yeah, we did EPL. We're like, sure, why not? We read a couple articles and put a lineup together. But yeah, man, you're riding the wave of this, man. It's blowing up, and it's got to be great for you.
Absolutely. Look, we're very excited. We're again, I talked about what I believe is the potential for growth in the industry. We're excited to be here. We're excited to be the sponsor. We're members of the FSTA. I actually sit on the board of the FSTA now, which is interesting to have a guy in the payments world sitting on the board of directors.
It's good for perspective, man. It's great for some perspective.
It just shows you also how many different areas that fantasy sports is touching. There's a lot of panels earlier talking about from the broadcast perspectives, how fantasy is being involved. We just acquired a company that actually will allow for fan engagement and improve the fantasy experience on mobile devices when people are actually at the games. So partnering with specific leagues, with venues, with teams, the opportunities are endless.
Yeah.
So it's very exciting for everyone.
Like you said, we're on TV.
There we go.
On a Fantasy Sports Network.
There we go.
All right, Neil, thanks so much for coming by. And thanks again for sponsoring this awesome event.
It's our pleasure. Thanks
for several years in a row now.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Neil Ehrlich, you got to watch, dude, you got to watch Silicon Valley.
I'm going to start.
You got to see the Ehrlich character.
I'm going to start, absolutely.
All right, man, check it out, OptimalPayments.com. Optimal Payments, platinum sponsor of the FSTA conference. We'll be right back with more after this.